rocking.
Is this where the damn drumming and the music kicks in?
Yeah. What is going on, everybody? Hello, and welcome back to On the Pipe Podcast. I am your host, as always, Tyler Shepardson, and today is Wednesday, April the 10th, 2024, years after zero. It's actually my little sister's birthday, my late grandfather's birthday, and the return of On the Pipe Podcast, OTP Tuesday, but on a Wednesday. And there's been some stuff that happened since the last time we spoke. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to OTP. We're going to get into some of the stuff that has happened over the past few weekends. We're going to start things out with the Camp Coker GNCC. Talk about that, how it shaped up. Obviously, a little bit of controversy going on with that one, with Stu Baylor getting bumped straight off the podium. They grabbed him right at the finish line. They said, hey, come with me, Bubba. And then next thing you know, it's a mad dash, a mad search for little brother Grant Baylor to tell him that he is on the podium. We also missed some U.S. sprint enduro racing that happened. There was a full gas enduro or GP or full gas went racing. I don't know what they did, but they went racing. There was a Mid-East hare scramble. I think a couple Mid-East hare scrambles. Easter happened between now and the last time that we talked. So we're going to go over a little bit of all of that stuff and talk about what is going on in the world of off-road racing. We got some exciting stuff on the horizon. This episode, as always, is brought to you by Zach Tussle. Shout out Zach Tussle. He is a brand new father. Zach and his wife welcomed in their new baby boy to the family. They didn't find out what the sex was, and it was a surprise. They didn't know until he was born. So shout out Zach. Awesome to see. Congratulations to them and their now growing family. You have heard about Zach Tussle on this podcast before, and that is because this episode is brought to you in part by Zach Tussle. Zach Tussle is a racer as well as a financial advisor. And he helps his clients win when it comes to retirement and financial planning. He is at a racetrack near you. He actually just got a brand new bike, and he's always my first recommendation when it comes to financial future or investing. Hit up Zach Tussle, Financial Advisors, DenverNC.com. Let him know you listen to OTP. You can get a free consultation and see just exactly how he can help you out. You can find him on the socials, DM him on there, or, like I said, go to Financial Advisors, DenverNC.com. As always, we are also brought to you by our official manufacturer of On the Pipe Podcast. Beta Motorcycles has been family-owned and operated since 1905. You already know that they have the finest enduro, trials, and dual sport motorcycles. They're known for their premium quality and rideability. They're the best-looking bikes on the market, and they back it up with their superior performance. It is the only bike that I trust to ride. You can go to betausa.com, find some more information on their available models, and find a dealer near you to get yours today. We got a couple other sponsors, but we're going to break those down a little bit later on in the show. Right now, we're going to get right into it. We're going to talk about the Camp Coker GNCC. It almost forces us to have a West Coast Wednesday on a Monday or a Tuesday because it was a West Coast domination out at the Camp Coker GNCC. Now, coming into the season, there's two races where you think that the West Coasters will have the upper hand. One of those races is down in the sands of Florida, and we saw Brandy Richards, West Coast girl, go out and win that one. Dante Oliveira, however, did not race at the Florida GNCC because he was out west racing in, I believe it was the NGPC, where he is the reigning champion. So we did not get to see Dante Oliveira in the sands of Florida, but we did see Brandy Richards down there where she went on to get a win. And then Camp Coker. Camp Coker was the other one. Fast, This year it was kind of dry, dusty, but a fast track, a notoriously fast track. And so those are the two races. When you come into the season, you're like, hey, Dante Oliveira, he's coming. He's racing the first little bit of the season. His best chances to have success are at Florida and Camp Coker. He wasn't in Florida. He was at Camp Coker. What do you know it? He went on to win the thing. Brandy Richards went on to win the WXC class as well. And then Gus Reardon, friend of the show. He kind of was a West Coast guy. Obviously, he is from Australia, where it is a lot of kind of the same thing. Fast, wide open, desert-style racing. Gus and his brother Will and their family moved to California, where he went racing out on the West Coast and had a lot of success out there. And then he transferred over to the East Coast full-time, where he's been having a ton of success in that XC2 class. So he's a bit of a West Coast rider as well. He won XC2. So it was like a domination of West Coast riders out at the Camp Coker GNCC. Dante Oliveira led that thing just about the whole time. Excuse me. He did not do it easily, though. Johnny Gerard stayed right on his heels and provided a heck of a battle throughout the day. It was only 2 seconds between our first and second place riders as they came across the finish line. But like I said, running around, filming them throughout the day, you could throw a blanket over both of them throughout the entire day. That's how tight that battle was, and it was an absolute joy to watch the KTM teammates as they went out to go 1-2 overall on the day. Stu Baylor would come across the finish line in third place after making his way up through the pack, but as we mentioned, there was a penalty that was assessed after the race. I was actually standing there right next to Stu when Tim Cotter came and tapped him on the shoulder, said, hey, buddy, we need to talk. Come over here. And he went over there. And then Jeff Russell comes out of the woods, and it's a meeting of the minds between those three riders. You see them throwing up hands. You see them not like fighting, but you know what I mean, like talking with their hands, like, hey, there was an arrow here. I went here. We went there. Couldn't really hear what was said. Kind of gave them their space. But there was no official announcement about it, which I thought was kind of strange because in other sports and in other disciplines, supercross, motocross, all that kind of stuff, which are in large part ran by the same group of people, you see a penalty report. So if a penalty is assessed, usually you get that public relations post of here's the penalty report, here's what happened, and here is everything we got penalized. We did not see that. In fact, we did not get any explanation at all of what happened. All we know is that Stu Baylor finished third, and he was interviewed on camera, and then he was not on the podium. Grant Baylor was on the podium. And in the 3 weeks since then, we still have absolutely no idea from a public standpoint what in the world happened, why in the world Stu Baylor was penalized. So that is a bit unfortunate, especially when you're talking about racing at the highest level and you got people wondering and talking online and trying to figure out what in the world went on. So to the best of my knowledge, what happened is that there was a line out in the woods that was reported by another team's team manager that had a recording of Stu Baylor going off the track. It was a line that was deemed to be off the track. They went out and measured it afterwards. From what I hear, once again, this is all alleged information. This is just what I heard through the grapevine. And it seems as if the line measured to be 27 feet. Now, we all know in off-road racing, you can go 25 feet outside of the marked course. The marked course is the arrows on the tree. So in this particular line, it measured 27 feet off of the marked course. But also, from my understanding, it was actually on the outside. So it made the track longer. I don't know the line. I don't know where it was at. But from what I understand, it was a line that added 2 feet to the track, not a short line. You know what I mean? But in off-road racing, that's kind of how it goes. A short line isn't necessarily the fastest line. So did he gain an advantage? I'm not sure. Did he go more than 25 feet off the track? Barely, from what it sounds like. But the other part of this whole thing is after it seems like Stu Baylor is the one that's involved in every single one of these things. Every single time someone is getting docked, it is usually a Baylor, which neither here nor there, just from an unbiased standpoint, looking at it, it is just kind of weird that every time something like this comes up, it usually affects Stu. And like I said, without an actual penalty report. We saw one penalty report happen last year when Stu won Big Buck. They came out with a penalty report of why they fined him $1,000 and gave that money to the SOS medical crew, which don't know how all that went down. But anyway, that was the only penalty report we saw. 2 rounds after that, at Camp Coker, I guess 3 rounds after that, Grant Baylor would win the race and loop his bike out, and they tried to take the win from him, and it ended up not sticking, but they fined him as well. There was no penalty report for that one. We saw riders get docked later on in the season. There was no penalty report for that one. So it's like, why was there one penalty report, and why is there not penalty reports anytime something like this happens? The world may never know. That would make things like this a lot easier for the fans to digest and consume and know what is going on out there. So, yeah, it was just kind of interesting that still to this day, Stu is docked, and we really have no understanding as to why. From the other thing that I have heard from the grapevine, I'm going to be in the forefront of honesty. There has been a lot of times like this in the past where a situation comes up, and I do my best to research it, find out all the information, reach out to the promoters, reach out to the teams, to the riders, to people involved, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. This time, I'll just go ahead and tell you, I didn't do that. So all of this is literally hearsay information. So it could be just as reliable as me saying I saw a dragon on my way home from the track. I really don't know what happened. Really didn't dig too deep into it, but just general conversations and hearing what happened. This is what I know to the best of my knowledge. As we mentioned, these things have happened in the past. And from one of the major ones that happened, there was video review guidelines that were put in place. It's in the Pro Rules Section K, where it says video must be submitted by a racer in the competition or their authorized representative in a timely manner within 30 minutes after the results are posted. This happened at the finish line before like XC2 and XC3 was even in. So it was in that time frame. But it also says the video should contain a continuous feed of the section of the race course where the alleged violation occurred, including footage of racers on the same team submitting the video whenever possible. Short clips of opposing team racers only may not short clips of the opposing team racers only may not be considered in the sole discretion of the official. So it's kind of interesting that the rules are put into place, but then it says in the sole discretion of the official. That leaves the door wide open to do whatever the heck you want to do. So then it's like, why does this rule even exist if the entire rule can be negated by the discretion of an official? And once again, this is not a form of journalism. This is not professionalism. This is a random guy talking into a microphone that some people would say doesn't deserve to have a voice in the sport. But anyway, here we are, and obviously, if you're hearing what I'm saying, you're listening to this right now. So, like I said, take it all with a grain of salt. I am throwing that disclaimer out there, but from what I understand, there was not a continuous feed of everybody in the class going through that section of track. And with as spread out as the riders were at this point, it would be kind of tough to get a continuous video of everyone on the track. But once again, if you make a rule and you put a guideline that says it must be a continuous video of everyone in the class, why does it not have to be? It seems like the rule should be the rule. And, I mean, it kind of goes back to this thing that we've talked about all the time. As far as, like, every time something like this happens, it's a different circumstance. It's a different penalty. It's a different way that they dock it. Sometimes they dock a lap. Sometimes they dock time. Sometimes they dock it's never been consistent. We don't have the same thing that happens each and every time this does, and now we don't even have the same way that they're handled. Once again, not speaking this to be fact, just speaking it from a general sense. And once again, if you are someone that is directly involved in this and you are upset at the things that I'm saying, and especially upset at the things that I'm saying not being factual and me saying that I don't know that they are factual, then you're probably the same person that should put out a penalty report so that people like me aren't just left to assume and find out what happened in roundabout ways. Like, there should be a penalty report that says Stu got docked for doing this. Here is the penalty. And I think that those should be upheld on a consistent basis. I'm not saying that it's right. I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying that it should be consistent. Speaking of consistency with rules, we've also seen, just as we mentioned, Stu Baylor gets docked last year and penalized for looping his bike out. Grant Baylor almost gets his win taken away, but instead gets a financial penalty as well for looping his bike out. And the overall winner of this past weekend's race literally ghost rode his bike towards the crowd. He didn't even loop it out. Like, loop it out, they say it's dangerous, it's reckless, whatever, it's opposed to public safety. When you loop a bike out, it flips right in front of you and it lands upside down and it doesn't roll anymore. To jump off the back of your bike and ghost ride it towards a crowd, in my opinion, is a much more dangerous scenario. And I know because the bike was 2 feet away from my feet. You can see it on our YouTube video. I'm standing right next to him when it happened. And at the time, my first thought was, that's badass. My second thought is, ooh, you gonna get in trouble. And I don't want that for Dante. And I didn't want that for Grant. And I didn't want that for Stu. So what I'm saying right here is not saying that I think Dante should be penalized because of what he did. But if you look at this thing on a consistent basis, if you deal out penalties for certain people, then those penalties should be dealt out for all people. And like I said, that happened right in front of me at my feet. The bike, luckily, ran into a berm and tipped over. Otherwise, it was heading directly for a group of olds that were standing there at the finish line watching what was going on. And, like, dude, they didn't even react to it, and the bike was 5 feet away from them. So had that bike gone into that crowd, I'm not saying it was going fast enough to, like, snap someone's back or kill somebody, but it's a dirt bike. It's a 250-pound motorcycle coming at you with moving parts, with a chain, with a sprocket that your hands can get caught in. Like I said, it was a group of olds, fall over, break a hip. You don't know what could happen. It just seemed pretty odd to me that that is what happened, or that something like that doesn't get any attention, doesn't get addressed, but the other thing with Stu gets jumped on immediately. Once again, I'm not saying that riders shouldn't be able to ghost ride their bike, and I'm not saying riders shouldn't be able to loop their bikes out. But I am saying that if you do a penalty for one, there should be a penalty for all. And in this scenario, I would definitely, wholeheartedly say that Stu and Grant should not have been penalized and Dante should not have been penalized. But I'm also saying if you penalize Stu and Grant, then you need to penalize Dante. I know that emotions had to have been high. I know that he is an outsider to the series. I know that he probably isn't privy to the Stu Baylor loop outs and the Grant Baylor loop out and all the drama that it caused last year. And I know that he had to have been overran with emotion. You're talking about a guy that is very, very, very well accomplished. He is the guy on the West Coast. He is the guy on the ISDE team. And he is the guy that had all the doubt in the world cast against him when he came over here to race GNCC, and he goes out and wins in his third GNCC race. So I understand with all that going on, the emotions get the best of you, just like when Stu goes through everything he went through and won Big Buck last year, the emotions go through you. When Grant comes back through the pack and gets his first win in a while last year at Camp Coker, the emotions run heavy on you. So once again, I'm not arguing whether or not the rule should be there. I'm just saying if you penalize one person for something, you should penalize everyone for it. Another thing is I think 3 or 4 riders got held up at the finish line due to starting their bike early. And one thing that I noticed about the start of this race is that the time between the 10-second call and the green flag waving seemed to be an eternity. Like, I remember sitting there filming it, and actually, if you go back and look at our YouTube coverage of the race, you can actually see the 10-second call, and then the camera kind of jumps. They made the 10-second call. I wanted to make sure I had that recorded, and then I saw that the speaker stand was in my way. I quit recording. I walked 5 or 10 feet away, and I started recording again before the race had started. All of that usually shouldn't transpire in a 10-second period, and my plan was to just pick them up at the first turn. But I got to my new spot, and I looked over and saw that they were still on the line, so I was like, I can go ahead and get them on the line still. And in the video, you can also hear very clearly several bikes start early. And from the people standing on the line, from the people racing on that row, from the people racing on the row behind them, there was also bikes that were for sure started beforehand that did not get penalized, that did not get held up and assessed a time penalty. But there were also several riders that did get assessed a time penalty. And when you do that after the first lap, the whole class is going by you while you're standing there. Everyone's still bunched up and packed up, and you're getting held for 15, 30 seconds, whatever it was, your whole class is getting by you. And there was, from what I understand, once again, just hearsay, there was other riders that started their bikes that multiple people said that did not get stopped. So once again, it's like, that's a tough call to make on the fly. I've been in those situations with dealing with stuff at Mid-East, dealing with stuff at Full Gas, dealing with stuff at GNCC in the past when I worked for them. So it is hard to make a determination on the fly and make sure you get the right amount of people. But that's also one of those things where if you're not 100% certain that you got everyone, it might be a little bit unfair to get the people, like pluck and pick people that you think did it. But I don't know. That's neither here nor there. That's more of a judgment call. But once again, there was absolutely no penalty report. So there's no knowledge or information or explanation given to us as the fans of the sport to figure out why Liam Draper got held up at the finish line, why a couple XC1 guys got held up at the finish line. So it would be cool to know that information. But anyway, I digress on that little rant. So Dante Oliveira gets the win. Johnny Gerard in second. Grant Baylor would come through the line in fourth, but end up getting his second podium of the year. I do believe it's his second podium of the year. He moves up into the third place spot, and he goes straight up on the box. And I wish I got this on film, but he goes up there, and he's like, yeah, I was back at the truck getting changed, and they came up and told me Stu got bumped off the podium. He's like, I have no clue what Stewart did, but he probably went 25 foot and 1 inch off the track. And we all know he's not on the right colored bike to get a call to go against him, or he's not on the right colored bike to turn the other cheek, or he made something about Stu being not on the right colored bike to get on the good end of that penalty, which I thought was hilarious. Once again, nothing towards any other team or any other riders, but the fact that Grant at that time didn't even know what was going on himself and goes up there and says that, everyone just kind of looks around at each other like, dang, did he really just fire off the hip about that? So, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it seems like when these things happen, it affects the Baylors pretty much every time that it happens. So, I don't know. Just a weird coincidence, I guess. Lyndon Snodgrass been having a heck of a XC1 season. His debut full season in the XC1 Premier Class. He ends the day with another top 5 finish. So good riding by Snotty out there. Gus Reardon would take the XC2 Pro Class win over Grant Davis. That was another battle that came down to the wire. Grant Davis coming out swinging this year, having a really good season as well. Him and Gus battling back and forth for that championship points lead, and Gus is going to carry the white plate into this weekend's round in Tennessee, round number 5. So Gus does get the white plate back by getting that win down in the sands of Camp Coker. Grant Davis would be in the number 7 spot overall, second place in XC2. Ryder Lafferty had a bit of a confidence-building ride as he works his way back into a top 10 finish, 8th place overall on the day. Jordan Ashburn, he was riding really good as well. He would end the day in 9th. Thad Duvall would round out the top 10 fastest overall riders and get his first XC2 podium, not only of 2024, but his first XC2 podium since, what was it, 2012? 2011? 2008? I don't know. Whenever he won the XC2 title, I posted about it on Instagram. I slept since then. But first XC2 podium in quite some time for Thad Duvall. So that's got to be a confidence-inspiring ride by himself as well as they head into round number 5. We take a look down at the XC3 class. It was none other than Jack Walker getting it done once again in that XC3 class. I think that's 3 wins in a row for Jack. Came out second place at Big Buck, and he's won every round since then. Our good friend of the program, Dustin Simpson, Destruction D, your favorite rider's favorite rider, Off-Road Jesus, the 927 Destructo Racing machine. He would end the day second place once again in that XC3 class. I believe that's 3 second places in a row for Dustin Simpson in that XC3 class. The working class hero, Dakota DeVore, would grab the final podium spot just ahead of Zach Davidson as they got to the finish line in that XC3 class. When you take a look at the top amateurs, they are ripping once again, and by they, I mean specifically Nick DeFeo. He's a man on a mission right now. He's a man possessed. This time he won top AM by a little over a minute, 16th place overall. Jason Tino, your number 2 top amateur on the weekend, and then JoJo Cunningham with a good ride himself in the 250A class, third place 250A, third place top amateur on the day. So yeah, that is the way that it went down. We take a look now, our WXC class, as competitive as ever. Brandy Richards would take the overall win. Rachel Archer in the number 2 spot. Rachel Archer battling her way back through there to grab that number 2 spot. She said after the race she's excited to get back to the technical stuff, which it looks like we're going to have this weekend. Rachel Goodish would round out the WXC class podium with a third place ride. Shelby Turner in the number 4 spot, coming off of her first GNCC win. And then Jordan Jarvis, big-time moto standout that made the transition into off-road this year for that AmPro factory Yamaha team, would round out the top 5 fastest riders. So an inspiring 5th-place ride by Jordan Jarvis over this past weekend. So that's got to be cool for her to see. But we head into this weekend, round number 5, down in Monterey, Tennessee at the Old Gray. If you don't know, Chris Landers, the owner of the Magna 1 team that transitioned this year into the Landers Racing KTM team, the factory KTM 250 or XC2 home of Grant Davis and Gus Reardon and Chase Landers. He owns the Old Gray, so he owns the venue that they race at. He also owns, from what I understand, just about everything in Monterey, Tennessee. So you're going to see a lot of Landers. You're going to see Landers Hardware. You're going to see Landers Market. You're going to see all sorts of Landers stuff going on down there in Tennessee. That is also the home of Jordan Ashburn, who was on that Magna 1 team until it transitioned this year into that KTM 250 Pro satellite factory team, however you want to word it. So what I'm saying is expect Jordan Ashburn to have a good run at it this weekend as well. It looks like there's going to be rain every single day this week, so that's going to make it a little bit slick. It is going to be a rocky and kind of mountainous track, so you combine that with new fresh trails and a little bit of rain. I think this is going to be a tight and technical race. If I had to guess, I would say something similar to the first year that we went to Beckley at the Boy Scout camp. That was still one of my favorite GNCC races that I've ever done, just because it was brand new trail, and that makes a racetrack completely different. So I would keep an eye on Jordan Ashburn. They posted some videos of them riding some technical stuff down there this weekend. But Jordan Ashburn, success in hard enduro, success, obviously past GNCC overall champion, and racing in his backyard down there in Tennessee. I would expect to see some big things out of him. But there is a man on a mission, Johnny Gerard. He won the first 3 rounds in the XC2 class. Obviously, Josh Toth we saw win the overall down in Georgia, but Johnny Gerard still won that XC1 class. So he currently holds the white plate by about 38 points over Stu Baylor Jr., who's gone 2-2, 3-4 this year so far on the season. So he's not out of it. If there's one thing about Stu, we know he's not out of it. We've seen him not race Big Buck before. We've seen him have a DNF at Florida before and still be in the hunt for those titles at the end of the year. So we'll see if he can put in a good ride in the technical stuff down there and see what he can accomplish. Jordan Ashburn currently 3rd place in points. 4th place in points is Grant Baylor. And 5th place, even after missing around, Dante Oliveira, getting the big points day, 30 points for grabbing that win. He's gone 8-6-1 in his races, and there's a lot of comments about Dante Oliveira, no one being able to beat him now that he got a taste of victory. I think this weekend will be the first test of that as we get back to some mountainous terrain, some slick terrain, some rocks, some technical stuff. Obviously, Dante can ride the technical stuff very well. He's had a lot of success at the ISDEs, but Camp Coker is the most familiar track to home that he has raced so far. We will see if he can back it up with a podium finish or even maybe a win this weekend in Tennessee. As we mentioned a little bit ago, Gus Reardon will go in with the white XC2 plate. He is just 2 points ahead of Grant Davis in that title chase. And then our reigning defending champion, Liam Draper, currently sits in the number 3 spot as far as points are concerned in that XC2 class. Throwaway race for him as he did not finish the second round down in Florida, which is a very tough break in the points race. But just as we mentioned, that's a big gap. From 1st to 3rd is 9 points. From 1st to 2nd is 5 points. You can make up a lot of points really quickly if you have good races. Liam Draper, is a guy that I believe he actually used to ride trials bikes, but he is a guy that could compete in hard enduro. He is a technical rider. He is a defending XC2 champion. I think we can see Liam have a lot of success this weekend, and all it takes is one of those really good races to kind of flip the narrative and get him back in the front. So that will be an interesting battle to keep an eye on, is those XC2 guys. Jack Walker is going to be leading the way in the XC3 points with 3 wins in a row. Dustin Simpson, all podiums this year, 3-3-2-2. He'll be in second place, and Dakota DeVore currently sitting in the number 3 spot in that XC3 class. So a lot of storylines as we head into the weekend. We are very excited to see how this whole thing is going to shape up. We take a look at our WXC class and the way that their points stand. Rachel Archer got the white plate back. So with a second place finish, she took advantage of a bad round at Georgia for Brandy Richards, finishing 5th. Now keep in mind, WXC does have 2 drops throughout the season, but as they sit right now, Rachel Archer, 1 point in the lead. She'll put the white plates back on that Red Bear Racing Kawasaki. Brandy Richards just 1 point back in the number 2 spot. And Corey Steed had some trouble at Camp Coker. She actually ran out of gas. So that affected her times, obviously, a lot, or her finishing position. She would end up 9th place on the day, lose some very valuable points there. That's going to put her with 83 points. That is 14 points down to the number 2 spot, 15 points down to the points lead. So Corey Steed, look for her to come on strong and have a rebound round this weekend. Shelby Turner, like we said, coming off of a GNCC win before the last round. She still finishes in a top 5 spot. And once again, if this is a technical track, if it is a rocky track, if it does get gnarly, Shelby Turner has a lot of hard enduro and enduro experience. Look for her to have a good run at it this weekend as well. Want to take a minute right here to let you guys know about onX Maps. If you've been watching the YouTube videos, you've seen the ads that we've been doing for onX Maps. onX Maps, super cool company, super cool people, and a very, very, very powerful app. I'm stoked that they jumped on board with us this year. Helps out a lot with everything that we're doing, just like you guys watching those YouTube videos help us out a lot as well. Really been trying to dive into the onX Maps even more. That is how the maps get laid out at the races and stuff. A lot of the track maps you see through various series, they're laid out using onX Maps. I got to use it a lot, especially this past weekend at the Mid-East race. I got up there on Thursday, so I rode a little bit and really wanted to play with that onX Map. So I put out the track preview of Mid-East that had like the 3D. You could see the mountains, you could see the elevation, you could see the trail going up the ridges. It was actually really cool. And the even better part about it is we were up in the mountains of North Carolina. There was no service. You can pick how big of an area that you want to go in, so you can see all the land boundaries and landowners and everything. So I basically took the entire property and you align it in a square, and you can actually download the off-road version of that map. So there was absolutely zero signal up there. Couldn't even send a text message. And I was able to download those offline maps and completely map out the course and see where I was at 100% of the time. So I know that these GNCCs a lot of times are in remote areas. I would just go ahead and expect this weekend's race to not have an ounce of signal at all. But if you use something like onX Maps, and by something like onX Maps, I obviously mean onX Maps, then you can download that off-road map and still be able to see everything. So you can map the course out. You can see exactly where everything is. You can see the elevation changes. You can see all sorts of stuff. You can use promo code OTP when you check out with onX Maps and save 20% off of a subscription. Trust me, you're going to want it. It's a game changer. Hope to show you guys a little bit more about that in the coming weeks. And then also Dimmers Precision Grading, DPG. Doing some work with DPG. They are an up-and-coming premier grading service out here in the greater Charlotte region in the Carolinas. All sorts of jobs, land clearing, excavation, grading. They do all sorts of stuff. So if you have a grading project coming up or you need some stuff done, reach out to Dimmers Precision Grading. You can find them on socials at Dimmers Precision Grading. You can go to dimmersprecisiongrading.com and check them out. He is a racer as well, an A-class racer here locally. He raced Mid-East this past weekend. He races North Carolina races, some local GNCCs. So once again, he is a racer as well. We like supporting our own around here. So if you have some grading work coming up, don't forget about DPG, Dimmers Precision Grading. We'll talk about some more stuff that we had going on. There was... What do we want to talk about next? What are you guys thinking? There was a U.S. Sprint Enduro that happened last weekend, or it might have been Easter weekend, now that I think about it. Anyway, it was round number 3. Johnny Gerard would take the win. Liam Draper in the number 2 spot. Gus Reardon would break his way into the overall podium and win the Pro 2 class. So first place Pro 2, third place overall. Craig DeLong in the final Pro 1 podium spot, fourth place overall. Jason Tino in the number 2 spot for Pro 2, and then Jack Edmondson, Jack Eddy, in the number 3 spot for that one. JoJo Cunningham would take the Pro-Am class victory. Gavin Simon in the number 2 spot, and Cooper Jones in third. Brandy Richards would dominate the women's Pro class. Obviously, one of the best women's riders to ever go to the ISDEs. So in the Sprint Enduro format, she is a force to be reckoned with. Corey Steed in the number 2 spot in that Pro Women class, and rounding out the podium was Ava Silvestri, who actually raced the GNCC as well. She is a West Coast Pro Women's rider as well, but she came over and raced a little bit on the East Coast, so it's cool seeing her out here and see her get some success in her time as she was out here. This past weekend, it was a national enduro. Kind of kept up on it the best that we could. I was obviously announcing at Mid-East, like we mentioned, a little bit of signal issues out there, but was able to get connected to some Wi-Fi and keep track of the racing throughout the day. Josh Toth, he would come out 4th overall, and then get it together, put it in gear, and win out the rest of the day. So he takes 4 test wins along the way to an overall victory down at the Cajun Classic down there in Louisiana. The Bader Motorcycles Cajun Classic, just to let y'all know. Grant Baylor would end the day in the number 2 spot, and Stu Baylor would end the day with a test victory and 3rd place overall in the day. Grant Davis actually... he had the fastest time for Pro 2 in test number 1. Evan Smith is actually who won test number 1. So Evan Smith came out swinging, 1st place overall in that first test. He would end the day 5th place in class, 6th place overall. Grant Davis, as we mentioned, Pro 2 class winner and 4th place overall. 2nd place in that Pro 2 class was Bubs Tasha. He would ride his way into the number 2 spot in Pro 2. And then rounding out your Pro 2 podium is your top amateur on the year so far, a real-life Tyrannosaurus Rex. Nick DeFeo would round out the Pro 2 podium. The top am on the day was none other than Chase Landers, getting it done out of the 250A class. And then as we take a look down to our women's elite or our women's pro class, Rachel Archer would dominate the day, take all 5 test victories on her way to a win. Shelby Turner would take all 2nd place rides on her way to 2nd place overall on the day. And then Brooke Cosner would round out your women's pro class podium in the number 3 spot. This past weekend, we also had a Mid-East race. Breaking news. We have a new factory beta rider on the East Coast, and it is Brody Johansson. Brody Johnson, the younger brother of Jonathan Johnson. Jonathan Johnson has obviously been on that factory beta team for 3 years now, re-signed with him this year at Florida. Johnny hit a tree, messed up his toe really bad. You don't want to see the pictures of it. I've seen the pictures of it. Trust me, you don't want to see the pictures of it. But he's going to be off the bike for a little bit, and that is going to mean that bike has been sitting dormant for the past couple rounds at GNCC. Brody Johnson, obviously, friends of the team. His brother is a factory beta rider, so he has been pitting right next to the beta rig with Jeffrey Johnson and the rest of their pit crew over there. And so it kind of came up like, hey, Johnny, with his toe, he risked losing not only his toe but his foot if he comes back early. The thing is still wide open. It's the craziest thing I've seen in my life as far as toes are concerned. But I was like, hey, instead of this bike sitting empty, let's put somebody on it. Who are we going to put on it? Brody Johnson. So Brody Johnson, a factory fill-in beta rider. He made his beta debut this past weekend at the Mideast Hare Scramble on the 252 Smoke. He told me he had about 7 or 8 hours on it before he lined up for that race. He grabbed the whole shot, and dude, did not look back. I think Lane Michael got around him for a little bit there at the beginning, but then Brody Johnson got right back in the lead and led damn near the entire race. And then literally coming into scoring and coming into the parking lot, there's one big downhill coming down the mountain. And I was talking with both of them at the finish line, and Lane Michael said that Brody was better than him everywhere on the track except for the downhills. He said the downhills is where he could make up some of that time. So on that very last really fast, really long downhill, Lane said he just stayed on it a little bit longer. They were elbow to elbow, and he was able to make the pass and get by him on that final down stretch coming into the scoring line. So Lane Michael would take the win. It was a stacked pro class, one of the most stacked pro classes I've seen at a Mideast. Over 1,000 riders once again at the Mideast Hare Scramble, which is also crazy. But Brody looked comfortable on that thing. He looked fast. He looked smooth. He led the majority of the race, and he had barely been riding that thing. So, one, stoked for Lane to come out and get that win. Obviously, that's going to be confidence inspiring for Lane, but also Brody's got to leave out of that thing with nothing but positive mindset after what he was able to do out there, and especially the people that he was able to beat. So Lane Michael would take the win. Brody Johnson in second. Thad Duvall would end up in third. So Thad came down. He raced back-to-back days. A lot of them boys raced the full gas race on Saturday. Thad Duvall actually won the overall at full gas. I think Lane got second. I don't quite remember who got third. It's very hard to find the full gas results. There are no combined results on their scoring, and there are no results on the website. And there's not even any posts, like no social media post of the podium. I know that there was some pictures going around on stories, but stories expire after 24 hours, so I couldn't find the final results for the full gas race. But they said it was a fun track, looked like a fun race. Said it was a little bit tight, hard to pass. But yeah, so a lot of those dudes pulling double duty, racing on Saturday and then coming over to Mideast on Sunday. So Thad and his wife Maggie, they were down here and did the North Carolina tour, raced both days. Thad would win on Saturday and then take third on Sunday at the Mideast Hare Scramble. The other guys that were in that pro class, Mike DeLosa was there. Josh Strang was there. Colton Shields was there. Mike DeLosa. I think I just said Mike DeLosa. Cody Barnes was there. Who else? There's a lot of factory guys there. It was a stacked pro class, and that's what I mean. For Brody to go out there and do what he did, that was awesome to see. For Lane Michael to go out there and do what he did, that was awesome to see. For Thad Duvall to go out there and do what he did, that was awesome to see. It was a really good race. It was a battle from start to finish, and it was cool kind of the setup because we could see the riders at the scoring trailer 4 times a lap. So a lot of times you don't really, me as the announcer, I don't see anything besides when they're coming through to check in, and I can check the scoring thing. So to be able to see them at various times throughout the race was a treat, especially with how tight the battles were and how close it all got. So it's a good racing down there at the Mideast Hare Scramble. That being said, I think that's going to cover it for most of our results. There's a lot of West Coast racing action that went on. Tried to look up the results, tried to keep track with what we missed. Yeah, we're going to have to keep you up to date with the West Coast stuff as it comes. I couldn't go back and find all the different results. So my apologies for that. But OTP, we're back, baby. We're going to be back regular again. If you made it this far in the program, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for supporting OTP. And thank you so much for when we have a little bit of incognito moments, you stick with us. I would like to say that this one was out of my control, but I guess depending on who you're talking to and when you look at it at the end of the day, I guess it was in my control. Just been going through some stuff, man. And I don't want to bore you guys, and I didn't want to talk about it at the beginning. I wanted to get straight into the racing, but just going through some stuff. And I don't know. It's one of those things where, like, I don't want to talk about it because at the end of the day, like, you don't care. Like, you guys are here to listen to racing. This isn't my personal podcast to talk about my life or myself. It's to inform you guys about racing and what is going on. But, yeah, man, sometimes people go through some stuff, and I think that's okay. And I think, hopefully, I've shook it. I want to give a big shout-out to my great buddy, my good friend, Ron Awad. Ron Awad, a lot of you guys know him from his videos and from his racing and things like that. He is a avid listener of the show as well, but he's become a very good friend of mine over the years, and super nice guy. And he let me borrow an e-bike, and I think last weekend, the weekend before, we went on it was Easter weekend. Went on a big ride. There was like 60, 70 people, if you saw my Instagram stories, that kind of rode over 30 miles of trail. Keith Mitchell was out there as well. Zach Brown was out there as well. But there was a big group ride of everyone out there riding. And Ron called me up and offered up one of his e-bikes for me to come ride. So to be honest with you, like, I don't even think I told him at the time. But yeah, something like that helped me out a lot. Like I said, just in a little bit of a funk. Go through that sometimes. Got a lot of stuff going on in my world. But, yeah, I just want to give him a big shout-out because that meant the world to me. And in the time that we weren't doing shows, like, I'll be honest, man, there's 3 weeks I didn't leave my house. I really didn't get off my couch. Didn't do a lot of the obligations that I have going on, including doing this podcast. So I just want to say I am sorry for that. And, yeah, so hopefully we kicked it. Hopefully we're past it. And hopefully we'll keep these things regular going forward. Y'all's support means the absolute world to me. The following the OTP has gotten has surpassed everything in my wildest dreams. I really do appreciate it. Really appreciate you guys following along, listening along, and checking out our YouTube videos. Means a lot. I don't want to go on a whole diatribe about the whole thing, but feel like I owed somewhat of an explanation as to what was going on, but figured I'd save it to the end, because if you're listening this far in, then you are a true listener of OTP, and for that, I appreciate the hell out of each and every single one of you guys. We got some stuff planned this weekend at the GNCC. Kind of hesitant to announce it just in case it doesn't happen, but what we are planning on doing is when I mentioned Chris Landers and how he owns the whole damn town of Monterey, Tennessee, where we're racing this weekend, he's also opening up a KTM dealership. They're going to have their grand opening at 3 p.m. Central Time on Friday. I have talked with Chris a little bit, and the plan is to do a podcast from the grand opening of Landers KTM there in Monterey, Tennessee. So hopefully we will see you guys again this Friday. If not, then we hope to be back to the regularly scheduled programming going forward. As always, be a friend, tell a friend about OTP, and also say something nice to somebody. Might help them out more than you could imagine. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time on the Pipe Podcast. Thanks.